Welcome back to the UIA Trusted Partners Podcast. On today's episode, I have a very special episode. I have an educational episode, in fact, for a lot of us because we have Lisa Ruzicka, Development Director at Deaf Child Hope International. Lisa, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking about what we do.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you on because, of course, here on the program, we love nonprofits and we love the passion behind them.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I get to learn about so many of them, and so do our listeners. So happy to have you onto the show because we'll get going right into it here. I did my little research here, as I do for the show. So I'm excited to talk about some of these topics and some of what you do present for the people you do help.
Yeah.
So for just a quick little overview, if the listeners or viewers haven't had a chance to understand or find out what Deaf Child Hope International is, first off, Google it while we're doing this show. But can you give us a quick little overview of what you do as far as your part in the organization, and how long have you been servicing the Omaha area?
Sure. So Deaf Child Hope started in 2010.
Okay.
Our founder, J.D. King, he wanted to start a nonprofit to help deaf children that are in poverty. J.D.'s connection with the deaf community goes back a long ways. His dad, Dwayne King, started Deaf Missions in 1970. And Deaf Missions was basically to reach out with the gospel to deaf people. And so his dad is considered one of the pioneers of deaf ministry.
Wow.
And J.D. never thought that he would really go into the deaf ministry, so to speak, because he was, busy doing music ministry and other type of things. But then the more he learned about what deaf children go through in other countries, the more he realized the need that there was. And so he started Deaf Child Hope. For many years, just did his full-time job and kind of did this on the side. And then finally went full-time into this ministry. And he hired me in March of 2024. I moved here from Norton, Kansas.
Wow.
Yeah, to be the director of development. So basically, I'm out here looking for our tribe, looking for people that really care about our mission and how we're changing the whole landscape for deaf children that are in poverty.
Yeah.
And there's a huge need, and that's basically what I'm doing.
I love that, though. I mean, that's a very important role to have, especially in any nonprofit. But to have that person out there trying to find the right people, the right hands to shake, it's a very important and daunting task. So more power to you. More power to you. Of course, there's a lot of amazing ways that people can help contribute, of course. I always want to talk about these first with nonprofits. I saw on your website that viewers can sponsor a deaf child or they can sponsor a teacher. I'd love for you to kind of walk us through that process of how we can become a sponsor for either a deaf child or a teacher.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And to back up 1 minute, I forgot to say there are 25 million deaf children in poverty around the world. And so there's even more deaf children than that. But those are just the ones in developing countries. And of those, 70% are language deprived.
Wow.
And so there is just a massive need for children to get language so that they can just be part of society, in the first place. And then our goal is also to share the gospel at some point with them. But in order to do that, they have to have some language.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where it starts. So the sponsorship model really helps on a monthly basis to have that consistent income for either a child or a teacher. It's really easy to do. You just go to deafchildhope.org. And at the very top of our website, there's going to be, sponsor a deaf child, sponsor a teacher. And you can go down and you can pick a country if you have a certain country that you want to sponsor. But we are right now in 11 countries. Wow. We've got deaf children all over the world. We currently have about 330 deaf children that are sponsored. So, of course, with that much need out there, we are trying to go bigger. And it's just really rewarding. Like, I sponsored 2 little deaf guys, and they're 4 years old, each of them. They're in different countries. I already got my first correspondence. So the kids write to you, and you can write back. You'll usually get 1 correspondence a year from your child or your teacher. So my little letter from my 4-year-old was a really super cute picture. He just drew me a little art picture. And so I wrote back to my kids and, told them, sent my picture and just kind of sent some graphical things because,
a little easier to put together.
Well, and they're just now, they don't know how to read yet.
Exactly.
So they're looking at pictures and stuff like that. So it's just kind of fun. I picked 2 4-year-olds so that I can follow them throughout life until they graduate.
That's very cool.
And so I'm looking forward to that. And we have many people that have sponsored for a long time because, for that very reason, basically you're kind of taking that child under your wing and saying, I'm going to support this child until they graduate high school. And then the other, great thing about it is, and we'll get into more about mission trips, but you may even be able to meet your child someday.
Which would be, how cool would that be? I mean, first and foremost, from both sides of that, being a child who is starting that process now and then, down the road 14 years from now, they get to meet you in person.
Yeah.
How amazing would that be? Because I could just imagine from their point of view, because again, a lot of these people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And then when they start to discover the crisis that's kind of in the world for this right now, of, hey, 70% are not doing so great right now with this.
Right.
I think it's just going to perpetually feedback of giving back more for those kids that are going through this. They graduate that, they see the problem, and they go, I am part of the solution, and they're going to dive in on it too. But then they get to meet that person who got those gears moving.
Yeah.
Talk about powerful, to say the least.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of the kids that I've heard their stories. I'm going to Kenya at the end of March.
Very cool.
And so I'll actually get to meet, not my kids because they're in different facility, but I will get to meet some of the kids that I've actually heard their stories. So, for example, we have a little gal, Michelle. She came to our orphanage. We run an orphanage in Kenya. She came there when she was 8 years old, no language at all. And so now she's 16. She's, of course, gotten language. She's kind of become the little mama to the new kids that come in. And now she has a goal to become a nurse.
Very
so
cool.
Just taking that person from being in total isolation, if without Deaf Child Hope and the people that help us, she would have just probably literally been in the corner of a room, her whole life. I mean, this is some of the, what children go through. And instead, now she has a future and a hope, to be able to give back and help other people.
I love that. And I think that is a good representation of what this truly stands for. Of, hey, it's an opportunity to open the door to something further down the line than just being stuck in the situation you were given.
Yeah.
So I love that, and very, very happy again to have Deaf Child Hope International on the show. We're talking with Lisa Ruzicka, Development Director at Deaf Child Hope International. Now, before we dive too far into things here, or to what you do offer, I should say, and how people can get involved, I want to ask, who are Lance and Sonia McWilliams? I saw this on your website, and I really wanted to get a better picture of this in my head. And I wanted to know how listeners can kind of stay up to date with some of these stories that you guys keep posting out. Because, again, I did a little research here, and I started going through some of your newsletters and some of your articles that you guys did, and I got captivated by it, but I didn't want to misquote or misrepresent it anyway. So I want to hand the floor off to you and kind of see some of the behind the scenes for Lance and Sonia McWilliams here, and then how can we stay up to date?
Sure, absolutely. So Lance and Sonia actually started the orphanage that's called Lance's Deaf Orphans in Kenya, and that's what I'm going to be able to go visit in March. Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. So they started that around 2007.
Wow.
And then in 2014, they asked us if we would just take over the whole thing. They were at an age that they just felt like they I don't know, different circumstances in their lives, and so, and I'm not really sure, honestly, how they met JD, but they said, hey, would you be open to taking over Lance's Deaf Orphans? And so that was a huge step for our ministry, to get away from the sponsorship model per se, and just say we'll take on the entire organization and all the operating costs and everything. So that was a big step of faith for JD. And God's been faithful. He's brought people to help with that along the way and been able to meet those needs every month. In fact, in that orphanage, when Deaf Child Hope did get involved, we were able to get them a well. You hear the stories of the kids walking. That's true. I mean, they were going through it in Kenya. And so we were able to get them a well. And then we were able to build a new dormitory for them. And this is just from the generosity of people. So there's some, obviously neat stories behind how God provided for certain things in that orphanage. But I would say that I mean, I'm guessing. I haven't been to orphanages in Kenya, but I know JD's taken it to another level as far as they now have computers and internet.
Wow.
And I think that's pretty unusual. So we feel like we're really doing a good job taking care of the kids that are there. And then to stay in touch with us it's pretty easy. On our website, there's actually a blog that you can sign up for.
Perfect.
Or you can also sign up for a newsletter. I think when you very first get into the webpage, if you've never been there before, the first thing that'll pop up is, would you like to sign up for our newsletter? And anybody that signs up to sponsor a child, and if they put an email in, I think you have to put an email in actually. So you're going to get the e-news, which comes out once a month. And that'll keep you up to date with what we're doing every month and, just anything about Deaf Child Hope in general. And then, of course, you'll get your correspondence from your child. But, yeah. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
And very easy to stay up to date.
Yes.
So.
And we, of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram. So we always ask that people connect with us on Facebook, of course. And I've found out recently, because I'm not that techie, but I found out recently if you connect on Facebook and you actually leave comments, then it gets you more views from other people. So so if you can get on there and leave comments, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, always leave some comments. Be a friend, tell a friend, share it to a friend.
Right.
It's all doing good work in the end. Now, something really neat was on your website I wanted to bring up was your mission trips. We kind of alluded to this earlier.
Right.
So I have a couple questions about those, but we'll start with the one that I want to lead off with, I should put. And how do viewers sign up, and what do they need to have prepared? Because it's obviously a great thing that you want to get involved and you want to be a part of this mission trip. You just can't show up.
Right, exactly, yeah. So the dates are on the website as far as which mission trips. This year we're going to Jamaica and Kenya and Uganda. And
very cool.
Those are a little bit later in the year. I think the dates are anywhere from September 27th to October 21st, depending on which area you're going to. So it's easy to get signed up. You just go onto our website, and at the very top, one of the drop downs is about mission trips. And then find the one that you want to go on. It'll give the costs and everything there. And then there's a little sign up button to where you can, it basically comes back to let us know, hey, I want to go on a mission trip. Obviously, you want to check, depending on where you're going, for your vaccinations, your passport, a visa, just the normal things. I'm finding all this out right now because I have never been out of the country.
Well, that's why I'm asking, especially after you said, hey, I'm leaving in March here, at the end of March. You'll be leaving about the time this episode airs.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll get it before you're gone so I can get it to you. We'll speed things up, Matt.
Yes. So we do have some leaders. Like if you have a lot of questions about the mission trip, we've got people that lead our mission trips, and they'll be happy to do a Zoom with you. We already had some informational meetings earlier in the year where we just had everybody that was interested get on a Zoom.
So I just missed out.
Right, and ask all the questions, but they're willing to do it individually too.
Love that.
And I am actually going to get on with one of our gals that has been to Kenya before.
Yeah.
Her and I are going to do a Zoom because I said, Grace, I need to know a lot of things about what shoes to wear, what clothes, just all
Those
the things,
are important
right?
things that people might not think about, though,
Yes,
I mean, you got to be prepared for a different climate, a different environment, a different food culture, a different everything.
Right.
So, yeah, those are some good questions to be asking.
So I learned just something interesting just a couple days ago because I was going to get the yellow fever shot. It's not mandatory to go to Kenya, but it is mandatory to go to Uganda.
Sure.
You have to get a yellow fever shot. And so I was going to get it anyway, just to quote unquote be on the safe side. And so I got to the pharmacy and I'm 61, and they said, well, this is not recommended for people over 60. And I said, well, what's worse, the vaccine or getting the flu shot? And she said, oh, the vaccine. And I was like, or not the flu shot, but getting yellow fever. I said, what's worse, getting yellow fever or the vaccine? And she's like, oh, the vaccine.
Really?
I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's from my age or over.
I guess so, yeah. Because that is just kind of interesting to think about that. There, at that point in time, there's an age threshold that says it's actually just better you get the fever.
Right.
That seems unsettling.
It is a little bit, but I'm like, okay, I'm going for it. I guess that's why I have an immune system. Well,
knock on wood, we don't run into yellow fever on that trip.
Right. And I'm definitely taking some malaria pills with me and stuff like that. But this is all new experience for me too, because like I said, I've never been out of the country, so I'm looking forward to it. And I know Grace will help prepare. And that's what I'm saying is like if people have a lot of questions, like like that, we have people that they can Zoom with and ask anything. And they're people that have done it and been there, done that, so.
Oh, so, you just got a couple professionals in it, exactly. No big deal. Yeah. Some experts that can just tell you everything you need to know. But, just take a chance.
Right, exactly.
No, I love that. And I love that it's so open and inviting for people to come get that information as well. Now, we had mentioned some of the upcoming mission trips that are coming up, but what is one way that you find is one of the more difficult aspects of either getting volunteers or spreading awareness about Deaf Child International? Or Deaf Child Hope International, because I feel like it's one of those, again, I'm not an Omaha native myself. So I'm from rural Nebraska. I'm from very Sandhills area, nobody around. Like, my town was actually a village. It's not even a town. It's that small.
I get it. So, almost Norton, Kansas, where I came from.
Yeah, but. I mean, so two peas in a pod here. That you and I are kind of the nudist, so to speak, to the area. And I'm just kind of curious, in your opinion, coming from that area and coming into Omaha, what difficulties have you really had, if any, getting that volunteer status for people to come in and help, or just spreading the awareness about what you do?
I think it is, when you're sort of a newer organization, any type of thing that can get the word out like this will be helpful.
Happy to help.
Networking groups are helpful. We like to go into churches, so it's really helpful if people would talk to their pastor or their mission, whoever heads up that, to say, hey, Deaf Child Hope would like to come in on a Sunday and present. So JD's really good at this. He's got a presentation that he does. A lot of churches will have like a mission month where they invite missionaries in, or just making the congregation aware of different ministries. So he can come in and, give him a time slot. If it's like, you've got 15 minutes, you've got a half an hour. He actually is a licensed minister, so he can preach the whole sermon too, or just present about Deaf Child Hope or whatever. But generally speaking, he goes through what the ministry's doing and then talks to people about sponsoring a child at the end. So that helps get awareness out there. Word of mouth and the website and just referring friends, is one of the best ways for sure.
Well, I'll keep that in mind as we go along. You see me scribbling along. I'm making notes for connections and possible abilities I could maybe connect you with, because I have never had a church on the show before. Okay. However, I do know a lot of different people that are connected to a lot of different churches.
Right.
So that's the fortunate part about what I do, is that if I don't know the person, I think I know somebody who might.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Of course. And I think just kind of continuing on this, not, powerful questions, but more in the raw kind of questions here. I'm sure you've probably run into it before, and I'm sure being a newer organization, you're going to get asked this a lot, is the why behind what you're doing.
Sure.
For our viewers and listeners at home, why is Deaf Child Hope International doing what it's doing?
Yes. Well, ultimately, we are a mission organization. Yeah. So, we believe that there's a lot of unreached people groups, and most people do not know that the deaf are one of the largest unreached people groups in the entire world. They're not the largest, but they're up there. Yeah. Only 2% of deaf adults have heard the gospel. And so that's really the ultimate goal. But obviously in between that, even if people don't ultimately end up becoming a Christian per se, the fact that we're giving them language, the fact that they, can now communicate with their friends, their family, to us, that's huge. And then, of course, the sponsorship also just provides some of the basic needs, just food and clothing. So it's humanitarian in that sense, but also it's just such a joy. Like, I've got some videos that I just got this week of some of our kids in Uganda actually learning in a classroom setting with all deaf children for the first time. And this was a group of kids actually that was in public school in Uganda, with only one interpreter for the entire school, and they had over 50 deaf children in this school. And so someone from America actually found out about that and felt led to start a deaf school. And so all those 50 kids got to transfer out of public school and into this private deaf school, and so now they are actually finally learning in their heart language.
Yeah.
A language they don't even know is their heart language yet, but it is because they can actually use it to communicate. And then, I had a little video of one of the little guys praying, learning about
fun.
Jesus and stuff. So it's just exciting. And with this particular partner, they are actually going out in the streets and rescuing kids off the streets.
Wow.
Like they have a little 7-year-old boy that has been living on the street since he was 3, just begging. He's deaf, has no language, so he's now in a little community of people that care about him, and super excited to learn sign language and stuff. So, so just so everybody understands kind of how we work internationally is, other than the orphanage that we run ourselves, we partner with Christian organizations in these foreign countries that are wanting to help deaf children, but generally speaking, just don't have the capacity, the funds. So the fact that they're, dedicated to deaf children, but then we can come in behind them to help get those kids sponsored. So like these kids that just are in this new facility, it's not a new facility, but a different facility where they can learn, then we'll get people here in America to sponsor each of those child, and that will give them the funds to continue educating these kids. Yeah.
Love that. Now, just for my perspective on this, and just for me putting a mental picture in here, when you're teaching them the heart language, and of course we're talking about sign language at that point, is it also advantageous, or is it part of the curriculum, I should ask, to read lips or do any of that, or is it mostly just conducting sign language and teaching just that communication fundamental?
Yeah, we generally just teach sign language. A lot of deaf people do end up reading lips, and it's amazing how it just kind of comes naturally, because all of us read lips. We just you don't realize it.
We just don't mentally pay attention.
Yeah, you don't realize how much you're reading lips. But if you look at someone to talk to them, as opposed to if they turn around, you're going to have a lot harder time, even as a hearing person, understanding what they say. But even the best of lip readers, I just learned this recently from an interpreter here in the United States. She said even the best of lip readers are only catching about 1/3 of what the person's saying. And so they're conjecturing the rest of it. So sign language is super important to true communication. It's hard enough to communicate, just people that can hear each other, right? And so it is really better to have that language where they can really communicate and not have to read lips.
Yeah, and then I kind of think about it too, because I have a friend of mine who his brother is deaf. So I've been around people like that a good chunk of my life, and it's always fun talking with him too. And he had kind of explained the same thing. He's like, I can read your lips, but it's,
not catching
unless
everything.
You're talking, unless you're talking a little slower and moving your mouth a little bit more, it almost feels obnoxious. They're not going to catch everything. Because, but if we're just talking normally, like you said, it's maybe every third word or so, they get out of it. But it's always kind of cool that I always kind of see it when my friend is talking to his brother. He usually he's just a talker. And he'll just talk with you. But as soon as he starts talking to his brother, he's also signing as he's talking.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and so I was like, that, because he does almost instinctually.
Right.
He just, second nature habit, kind of, he just starts as soon as he's looking at his brother. And to me, I was like, do you even realize you're doing that? And he kind of told me at one point, he's like, I kind of forget that I do it.
Right.
Because, again, from being brothers, he's known it his whole life kind of thing.
That's great.
Yeah, and I just kind of thought, I was like, secret skill there, man. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
You can just do that, and you know what he's saying back.
Yeah. And I think one thing in our culture that is actually changing is that people are realizing how valuable sign language is for their own children. Like, they're realizing that their little 1-year-old, if you just teach them a few words, they're going to be a lot less frustrated 1-year-old, because they can learn their little signs: milk, food, more, more. They'll learn their little signs.
Teaching his little one too.
Yes.
She's about 1 going on 2, I think, right now. So, and he's teaching them the same things, because again, I think it's just a really fun perspective that in today's world we kind of think of it. We kind of take a step back, because back in back in my day at least, it was, if your kid wasn't paying attention, or he was just temper tantrums, and there wasn't a science, or there wasn't a, hey, is there an actual reason that this? It was just kids
about
are
frustration,
being kids.
right?
Kids are just kids. It's the terrible twos, and and I think that's a really good point to bring up. You teach them a couple of key words in sign language that I mean, what is it, like 4 or 5 before you're somewhat fluent in speaking, somewhat to that degree, like 3 and 4 is where you're learning the words kind of thing. So, I mean, it's probably frustrating when you're that age and you're trying to learn and you're trying to say the thing and you just can't.
Right.
So, no, I think that's very important. I think in today's world, I wish curriculums included sign language as a foreign language.
Yeah. I think they are starting to a little bit
good.
in some of the like colleges and
that's really
I'm not sure about high school, but yeah, it is finally recognized of like this is a separate language. And one thing I learned, so I've been around deaf culture a little bit. My uncle is deaf, and so he was hard of hearing when I was younger. And went to Omaha School for the Deaf when he was 14. He's 80 now. But that was when Omaha School for the Deaf was around, and finally got language. Well, pretty much he hangs out with all deaf people because nobody in the family except me knows sign language. And so that has, really become his family. But I've just realized over time, so I just sign my words just like I'm saying to you, but I use signs with them. So I'm basically signing my own language. But ASL is a different language. It has a different sentence structure. They would say car blue, it's very rudimentary. It's a different order than we speak in. And so the more I learn it, as I'm getting older, I'm actually learning more. The more I learn more, the more I realize, wow, I really didn't know ASL. I was just signing English,
That's really interesting to think about. Because I kind of draw that parallel with Spanish, because sometimes how we would say something is not necessarily how they would say it. So that is very interesting to think about, that ASL in its own language form has its own sentence structures, has its own fluidity to it that signing English is not correspondent to.
Yes, and the challenge that we have at Deaf Child Hope is there's over 300 different sign languages.
Wow.
So it's not just ASL, and I think a lot of people perceive it that way, like there's just one sign language. Why wouldn't everybody just sign the same? But no.
Right?
why do we all speak different languages? It's like it's the same with sign language. So yeah, most people are shocked to find that out. I was shocked to find that out.
It makes sense though, because I was kind of thinking about
once you think about it.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this as we were talking. Like, it does make sense. If I've got a Spanish program going on right now and I have to have a signer there, they're not going to be signing in English.
Right.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Right.
But again, like any foreign anything, if they have to have an interpreter or signer there, it's not going to be in English.
Right.
Which... just a thing to think about there for a moment. It's like, wow, what, take a step back, America. Like, zoom out a little bit. Not to deviate too far off a track here, but you lost your GPS.
I guess I'm here or something.
Now, this question I had a little bit of trouble wording. Just want to be clear about that so I don't come off the wrong way when I ask this. I'd seen this on your website and it struck a chord with me, and I wanted to present this in a way that is palatable for everybody else to listen to and to catch this.
Okay.
There's a stigma, and this is the only word I can maybe think of to try to get this to correspond correctly. There's a stigma about deaf children, and not to be brutal about it, but oftentimes they're usually considered dumb. They're considered simple, whatever the case may be, for a lack of more rude words.
Right.
I'm just kind of curious, is that stigma still as prevalent as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Because I think back and, it's pretty recent times that we've been really more accepting into the deaf culture and bringing in more ASL and, really expanding on these, that I feel like, I hope that stigma is starting to fade by the wayside, but I don't know. You're the professional. I'm going to leave it to you on this one.
Well, I think America has made huge advancements in that. Now, in foreign countries, still more of the stigma. That's why people dump their kid on the side of the road. It's like he's either stupid or demon-possessed or whatever. And in foreign countries, sometimes they don't even get tested to know that they're deaf. They don't even know what's going on. The parent doesn't. But yes, in America, thankfully, that stigma is being overcome. I think it's really cool to see them including sign language in movies. You know, I think Godzilla, in commercials, and not just deaf, but blind and various other handicaps, So I think that, it's good to see the advancement, but also just to remember that, we are usually a little bit ahead of the the developing world. And so our organization still deals with that a lot. In fact, it even trickles down to the teachers. So if teachers want to help deaf children, it's kind of like, why are you wasting your time on those dumb kids? Yeah. And so that is partly why our organization is so important, is because there might be people out there that are willing to help and teach sign language and willing to put their career or whatever on the line, but they're not going to have good support from their community necessarily. Maybe there's churches or something that would support, but in general, it's not going to be like government or, like it is here where...
It's not going to be a big community push. It's going to be, you got this organization.
Yeah, exactly. And I was even trying to find out, well, like, if Michelle wants to go to college to become a nurse, which she does, how does that work over there? And so our field director was telling me it's very difficult in other countries because they actually have to hire their own interpreter. So it's not like here where it's like, oh, you're deaf, let us get you an interpreter. In fact, we have to get you an interpreter because that's in the ADA regulations, right? Well, not so in other countries. So I'm just really praying that God's going to provide. I mean, he's rescued her from the streets. He's brought her into Lance's Deaf Orphans, and I am confident that somehow she's going to get her nursing degree. But it's going to be way more challenging for her in Kenya than it would be in America, for sure.
Oh, that's unfortunate, but that is honestly the raw truth of it.
Right.
I mean, that's something that's good to understand on my side of things and the listener side of things and the viewer side of things, because we don't get to be exposed to that all the time.
Exactly. So, in fact, I'll tell you a story that one of our board members had gone to Haiti, and this was probably 10 years or so ago. She was in Haiti and visiting one of our partners in Haiti. And so she thought, well, let's just take a day out. I'm going to take the kids down to the market and we're going to get ice cream. Normal thing for teachers to, let's go on a little field trip, right? And so she got the kids down to the market and they were going to get their ice cream. And they literally got chased out of the market by the other vendors there saying, get those demon-possessed deaf kids. You're bringing a curse down here upon us. Yeah. So there is a huge spiritual stigma in a lot of these countries that practice witchcraft, which Haiti does, hence the situation there now. But so there is just a huge thing of like, just take them back. We don't want them to be around us. They might bring their curse on us, that kind of thing, which just broke my heart when I heard that, because it's like, wow, can't even take an outing in some of these countries. They're not all like that, but
of course, but
that was just a true story that she told me. Yeah, right.
And I was going to say, I mean, realistically, and I think us in America, we get a little bit comfortable with the fact that anywhere we go in America is usually pretty inviting.
Right.
Usually.
Right.
There's a couple of exceptionary states in here. But usually it's pretty inviting. It's pretty open. You can go anywhere. You can kind of talk to anybody. You can do most anything you're really wanting to do.
Right.
I think a lot of times we kind of take that for granted because if you go even into a European country, your rights and your restrictions are very different. And what you can and cannot do are very different, dictated on that country's belief, their culture, etc. So it's very real to say that, hey, if they think it's a demon-possessed child, they're going to chase you out of town. Exactly. And it's not going to be like they're running at you with a stick and just waving at it. They're probably coming at you with a machete or something of the like that could be threatening.
Could be dangerous.
Just again, just for realism for the viewers, that there are dangerous situations because of just a development disorder or a born disorder. That they couldn't help, that they couldn't prevent. Yeah, so that's why we have the amazing people at Deaf Child Hope International, of course, trying to shine a light on a dark world here.
Yeah.
Now, I am very curious, what is one of the biggest challenges in your organization that you've had to overcome?
I think it would be the language barriers.
Yeah.
Because when we do take these mission trips, like, for example, when I go to Kenya, we're going to have a Kenyan sign language interpreter, So, it's the communication is difficult wherever we're going, and so you have to hire people that know what they're doing, and even just to get out to some of these facilities, it's like a 6-hour drive from
the
Nairobi to Kisii, which is so that's a challenge. It's also a challenge just to find the people that really need help, the organizations that are out there kind of floundering, so to speak. So our field manager, Grace, she's deaf. And she was raised by missionary parents. So we feel like God just kind of made her perfectly for this position because she has been traveling around her whole life as not a pastor's kid, but an MK instead of a PK, a missionary's kid, traveling around. And so she's actually seen in lots of countries the outcast deaf children, and it just broke her heart as a younger woman. And so when she ran across Deaf Child Hope, she literally quit her day job as a school teacher up in Michigan. She's got a master's in education. Wow. She was a school teacher. When she came and went on one of our mission trips, she came back and said, I think the Lord really wants me to work here. And so she called up JD, got in touch with him, and said, I think I'm supposed to work for your organization. And he's like, well, we need a field director really bad, but I don't have the funds right now. And so she has been raising her own funds. And then, of course, my job is to help raise funds. And her job is to get out there and find the organizations that need the help and are willing to help these kids boots on the ground, and she's doing a great job. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Now, just because it came to mind when you had brought it up, when you and the organization go out to a location, we'll use Kenya for example, and you had talked about having a Kenyan translator. Are you teaching those children the American Sign Language, or are you teaching them Kenyan Sign Language? Okay. That was what I was kind of curious about. I was like, okay, we were just talking about how there's different languages in Sign Language world. I was just kind of curious if it was
Well, they'll have to learn
their native
Kenyan Sign Language, and then they'll have to learn Kenyan language, and then in Kenya, they will most likely learn some English too.
Sure.
Because it's a colonized, or
there's a trade
was back in the
there.
way. But generally speaking, that's the challenge that deaf kids go through. So they'll have to learn their sign language, and then they have to learn the written word, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about how our kids learn the written word.
Yeah.
It's a lot auditory. You sound it out. Your mom's like, what does O sound like? Or with an E at the end, it sounds like this, right?
Yeah, they tell you how your vowels sound.
Right. And so if you can't hear that, it's even more challenging for them to learn. And so anyway, that's just part of the challenge of the educational system that we have to have at each of these partners.
Yeah, and that's a valid point to bring up too, because I think of it as you're teaching like an almost a borderline toddler infant kind of deal, just for somebody to put this into their brain. If their child's not deaf, you're trying to teach that young of an age how to read a word and trying to do things. Just for a comparison there. Not to say that they are of that intelligence level. They are very intelligent.
Well, they get started late generally,
They just get stuck because they don't get the attention to say, hey, this picture represents this animal. And try to work with them, because again, cultural boundaries, spiritual boundaries, whatever the case may be.
Right.
But it is important for people to know kind of a little bit behind those scenes and behind the curtains.
Yeah, and one of our educators had told me that it takes, I think it's 2 years for every year that they're behind in school. It takes the equivalent of 2 years for them to catch up. So it's kind of a slow process. Like if you don't start to learn language till you're 10, oh my goodness, that's going to take you a lot longer than if you learned when you were, watching your mom sign when you're born, right? And then you're learning as you go along. Well, he hadn't had that for 10 years, and now he's starting over. So it takes a lot longer.
Well, I just kind of think of it as like, you're going into a field of work. Now you've been there for 10 years. All of a sudden that job doesn't exist anymore, and you just got put into something different. Good luck. Here's the training manual.
Right.
And so, it's very much just to kind of get a different perspective for us listeners and for us here, and just to get a good perspective of how we can help and how we can maybe support here. I do want to ask you this, and this is my final question on the professional side.
Right.
Put it that way.
Right.
But what is something that you want us listeners or viewers to know about more when it either comes to Deaf Child Hope International, or about your organization or the mission in general?
Okay. Well, I would like everybody to know that they can become an ambassador for Deaf Child Hope. That can involve a lot of different levels of being an ambassador. We have an ambassador network that we're just started. We just launched it actually in February. We just launched that, and we've got 10 ambassadors now. Yeah, thank you. And so those are people that have basically committed. Well, number one, most of them are, I'm sure almost all of them are sponsoring children, so you can start with that level of commitment, but then also just committing to telling others about Deaf Child Hope, basically trying to get your church involved, just thinking like, how can I get the snowball rolling, you know, because you can't tell the world about a need if you're only one or two people, you know, and so the more people that we can get educated and involved, you know, the faster this snowball's going to roll and the faster that these kids are going to get help. So we want to just greatly expand what we're doing because we don't want these kids to have to grow up without language.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I love the mission behind it. It is obviously from a place of passion where this all originated from.
Yeah.
Call it a divine calling, call it whatever you would like to call it at home. But it is very important that Deaf Child Hope International is here and hopefully here to stay for the long run, fingers crossed, because we have an amazing community here in Omaha that I know when the so to speak, the Batman signal goes up for aid and for help and for need, it's usually reciprocated. So it is one of those things. Be a friend, tell a friend, share this episode with a friend, comment down below somebody who might be interested in it as well. We've had the distinct pleasure thus far to sit down with Lisa Ruzicka, Development Director of Deaf Child Hope International. Now, Lisa, are you ready for those burning personal questions?
Yeah, those burning personal questions. Yeah.
They're not too bad, I promise. But it is 2025, and some of my guests thus far on the year have told me that this is going to be their year. They're kicking it into gear. I've even had one tell me that this is the year of women empowerment. So,
there you go.
You know,
guess I should know that.
Hey, I'm all for it. Let's see it happen in 2025.
Right.
But I'm curious. It did make me think a little bit more. I'm like, you know what is just something that you are looking forward to in 2025? I think that's a fun question.
That is a fun question. I'm looking forward to graduating college.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I started when I was 18 and I went for 2 years. And then at the time I was like, well, I'm out of money. I don't really want to get into more debt. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I got into the business world and did various things and loved all the things that I did. They were generally more related to real estate, construction, doors and millwork, believe it or not. And then later in life, I got into the development field. And so my job before this, I've had 2 development jobs. So this one, and then before this, I worked for Valley Hope, which is a drug and alcohol treatment center. They actually have a facility here in Omaha. Yeah, that's an outpatient facility, and they have one up in O'Neill.
Yep, I was going to say there's one in O'Neill.
O'Neill, Nebraska.
I thought there was another one, but I think I'm thinking of a different organization at that point.
Yeah. But they are in 7 states. And so that's really where I got my foot in the door for development and just realized it's like, oh, wow, you know, it was a whole different concept for me to realize that there are people that have capacity and want to make a difference. Like, how do you go from success to significance? And, you know, so that's what it's all about. But anyway, so Valley Hope really valued education. And I thought, well, while I'm here, I'll just go ahead and finish my business degree. So that's what I've been working on, 1 class at a time for probably 4 years now. And I'm in my second to last class. In my last class, I'm thinking I'll be done by summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite the accomplishment. So, not everybody sees that through. So congratulations on that.
It's been good.
Yeah. Now, I always, and this one's a little bit interesting since you're a year of living here?
Almost, yeah.
Well, just quite.
Came here in March.
Yeah. So this one's kind of an interesting one for you because you're similar in my boat. You didn't grow up around Omaha. You don't know a lot about Omaha, you know, off the top of your head.
Right.
So my question for you is, what do you consider your Mount Rushmore? Just a couple of places that if I'm coming in from out of town, you would tell me to come check out and see.
Well, it's funny because I keep thinking, when I get done with college, I want to go do blah. When I get done with college, you know. So I've been keeping notes on my phone of places that people have told me about. But I would say one of my number ones that I want to go do is Fontenelle Forest.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I like the outdoors.
It's beautiful.
And I've heard there's a zip line there. I guess I'll try that. Why not?
Might as well have some fun.
So I really want to go there. I love foresty areas. Yeah. And so that's on my to-do list. I keep hearing myself say, as soon as I'm done with college, I'll blah, blah, blah. So there you go. I'm definitely going to do that.
I love that. And I always tell people, again, when they share the passion that I do for nature and forestry and all that good fun stuff, I'm from the rural part of the state.
Right.
So if you're ever needing a vacation or a weekend away, I always tell people to go camp out at the Calamus Reservoir. That's about 10-ish or so, 15 miles from Burwell.
Oh, cool.
It's Burwell and Taylor here on the map. The Calamus is in between both of them. They share it.
Okay.
It is one of the best places you can go because when it gets sundown, all you got to do is drive maybe 3-4 minutes down the dam road. And I'm not cursing. It's the actual
yes,
dam of the water.
Right, no.
Actual dam. But you drive a little bit down that dam road and you just get away from the spotlights from like the campsites.
Yeah.
And you can see everything.
The galaxy.
You can see it all. And it's for miles.
The Milky Way, I guess I call it.
Yep. Call it whatever you'd like.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful sight to behold, and it's very peaceful out there. So if you ever do want a good little reconnect, and Halsey Forest is out that way as well.
Okay.
So
all right.
have some fun out there and get to enjoy some really beautiful sights. That's my home stomping ground, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I always recommend it because I'm biased. There's never been a better view out there than what I've seen on the top of a sandhill.
Yeah.
But I've
cool.
seen the mountains as well, and I've seen them in the starlights as well. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
But something about the sandhills, they just sing to you.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now, here in Omaha, there is so much.
Yeah.
I get a lot of great answers when I ask this question because they're all different. And so I'm really excited to ask you this one. What is something here in Omaha that you want or wish people either knew more about or just supported more?
Little downtown Papillion is a super little tiny sweet spot. There's a book nook there. There's Graylee's old-fashioned ice cream shop.
Delicious.
There. Have you gone there?
I used to actually live over in the La Vista side of town.
Okay.
So I was right by there, and my girlfriend and I would make a quick little trip over on the weekends. And when it was nice in the summertime, we would pop over and we would just go have it because they have a couple of stations out kind of in the back side of things and just little park benches you can sit at.
Yeah.
And just enjoyed the air. I mean, it's beautiful downtown.
Yeah, and they've got a really nice park.
Yeah.
There's an arboretum. There's a butterfly. Well, I guess it's like a little thing that's shaped like a butterfly, but it's filled with flowers. I'm sure the butterflies do come there.
I'm sure.
And there's a veteran memorial and all kinds of things over there in Papillion. So, I would recommend going there.
I like Papillion. It's that kind of just small town sliver. You know, it reminisced me of home a bit when I drive through there. Same with La Vista. It's kind of that same little vibe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I anger a lot of Omahas when I say this, but unfortunately, Omaha is getting big enough that it's becoming Denver, and it's starting to absorb the surrounding towns a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. You just, instead of them being a town, they're now just a district.
Right. I know. So I actually didn't tell you this part, but I grew up in Grand Island and went away. And when I turned 18, I went to Denver for 13 years, and then Washington State, and then Kansas. So I made this big circle, just how life took me. So I know what you mean. I left Denver when it was 1 million people, which I think is Metro Omaha right now. And when I went back 20 years later, I was shocked and like, oh my goodness. And it's angry. And I mean, the drivers are angry now.
The traffic is angry.
I'm like, take me back to, a little small town, right? And so that's why I enjoy Papillion and Omaha still. I think it does have a small town feel.
It still does, yeah.
It has a very friendly feel here. And so, I don't know. I've enjoyed being here.
A lot of people here call it a big small town.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more because I swear I can meet somebody once, have a podcast with them, or just meet them at a breakfast or a coffee thing, and then maybe a month later, spot them in a random location somewhere in town, and they go, hey,
what are you doing?
Yeah, so it really does feel like that small town in a heart sense that you can run into almost anybody.
Yeah.
So I do love that as well. Now, before we wrap up the show here, Lisa, is there anything else that you want to leave the listeners off with, either for support-wise or just go check us out?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Our website's easy enough, deafchildhope.org. So that's easy enough. And hopefully you'll support Dylan if you have some commercial insurance needs. That would be great. And look forward to hopefully connecting with some people because of this.
Absolutely. And if you are one of those people and you're interested in connecting, don't worry. The website's down in the description below. You can click right there and get connected today. So, Lisa, I want to thank you.
Me.
Yeah, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come on to the Today Show. Again, we've had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to sit down with Lisa Ruzicka, Development Director of Deaf Child Hope International.
Yeah.
Lisa, thanks again for coming on to the show today.
Thank you, Dylan.
Of course. And thank you, listeners, for always tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll have more next time right here on the UIA Trusted Partners Podcast.